Congresswoman, nice to see you again. Obviously, the Democrats want something. They want anything to get Jasmine Crockett off the front page and off the television set. So they are, I mean, the only signal that I'm getting here is that they're desperate. Am I wrong?
I was going to use that exact word. Thank you for having me today. I think it is a show of desperation that they have glommed onto this the way that they have. I know Mike. I served with him in the House prior to him being appointed to this position. He's one of the smartest men I know. He's just absolutely fabulous when talking about and addressing our national security issues. I have a great amount of trust in him. Was this a snafu? I think that that's fair to say, but also I think that the administration, unlike the previous administration, is being incredibly transparent and getting the information out to the American people. We just need to have a better understanding of exactly what was disclosed. I haven't yet had a chance to look through all of the messages that were sent back and forth. But again, Mike is a good man. Mike Waltz is a good man. I'm glad he's there. I know that he has the best interests of America at heart.
Yeah. Look, you've got Democrats, senators, screaming for Pete Hegseth to resign, screaming for your former colleague Mike Waltz to resign. None of that makes sense based on anything that I've seen so far, Congresswoman. Again, this seems it seems to me like they're clanging pans together, trying to distract the American people. Look, Donald Trump has had the best of them for 65 days now. He's been on a fast track, delivering on promises. You've been part of that effort as well, obviously. And they need something to slow him down, because right now, his polling is very good, and the popularity of closing the border, bringing down inflation, trying to end the war in Ukraine, trying to end the conflict in Gaza, all of these things are resonating with the American people. They need something, don't they?
Yes, they do. This is about deflection from what the Trump administration is doing. And as we all recognize, one of our biggest national security threat relates to the open border from the last administration. And that's where the Trump administration has been absolutely stellar in terms of closing that border, providing additional security, and addressing the risk and the threats from many of the criminals that came over that border over the last 4 years. So again, he's doing what the American people sent him to Washington, D.C. to do. I'm proud to be a part of it as a member of Congress. I think Mike Waltz is doing a great job. Pete Hegseth is doing a great job. The vice president is. This was a discussion, and it was a discussion about various options that they had in terms of addressing what they perceived as the threat. So we're probably seeing more than perhaps they wanted us to, but at the same time, I think that now they're being very transparent. I think there's most likely going to be an investigation to find out exactly what happened. But let's keep our eye on the ball.
Agree.
Let's focus on what is in the best interest of America.
And I think everybody's fine with the investigation. Have the investigation. Was a mistake made? Obviously, somebody included Jeffrey Goldberg where he did not belong. Okay. But it wasn't classified information. It was not war plans, as he claimed. We've now seen the text messages and so forth. So it's not anything that he claimed, not that I can tell, at least not so far. So let's move on. And the good news is the Houthis have paid a very high price. Nothing was stopped. The operation came off without a hitch. And for the first time in 4 years, Americans are asserting their power to make sure those shipping lanes are open, to knock terrorists back into their holes and to take them out if necessary. I mean, it has been a success so far. We should be saying that, shouldn't we?
I think so as well. Let's focus on the outcome.
Absolutely. All right. So Wyoming, energy state. Let's talk about Donald Trump's energy policies. Obviously important. Wants to move forward with refiring up coal-fired power plants, maximizing coal production. You've got a lot of coal in Wyoming, a lot of natural gas. So LNG going to Europe would be a big thing for Wyoming and for several states. How important are these energy practices? And with the new energy secretary moving forward, full speed ahead as well, what does that mean for the people of Wyoming and for America?
Energy security is national security. Under the previous Trump administration, for the first time in over 50 years, the United States was energy independent and a net exporter. And we need to get back to that, not only because it's the right thing to do in terms of creating jobs right here in the United States, but it also helps our allies around the world. Why are we, you look at someone like Germany, and many of the European countries have been essentially funding both sides of the war between Russia and Ukraine, because while they're supporting supporting Ukraine and sending some funds that direction, they're also having to buy fuel from Russia. So it doesn't make any sense. We have a lot of enemies that under the Biden administration were able to substantially increase output because we were not producing right here. Just looking at Iran, when we're talking about the Middle East and the destabilization there, we can trace all of that back to Iran. Iran made $110 billion over the last 4 years in oil and gas sales because of Joe Biden lifting the sanctions, so that they were able to fund the October 7th, 2023 attack. They were able to fund the Houthis and the Hezbollah, and so as a result of that, you've destabilized the Middle East. Whereas if we produce domestically, it creates fabulous jobs in Wyoming and the surrounding states, and it provides affordable, reliable energy, so it reduces energy poverty.
Yeah, it certainly does. You know, and you make this great point. Look, Germany and these other countries in Europe were paying Russia more than they were paying to fund the war in Ukraine. It made no sense at all. They're funding both sides once again. And we find ourselves in that strange position where you're funding both sides of the war. 2,500 people on average are dying every week. We'd like to see the war come to an end. Donald Trump is working with Steve Witkoff and others to try to make that happen. Not easy so far, but I think we've made progress there. But the first thing is, let's enrich Wyoming. Let's enrich Pennsylvania. Let's enrich Alaska. Let's not enrich Russia, right?
Well, then let's make sure that the American citizens can keep more money in their pockets and that they're not overpaying at the pump or to heat their homes. Wyoming's the largest coal producer in the nation. We have clean, reliable, affordable coal. We are incredibly environmentally sensitive in terms of taking care of the environment, protecting our water resources, air quality, land quality, etc. We're the 8th largest oil and gas producer. We have one of the highest high-quality reserves of uranium in the United States. We do a fabulous job of providing energy resources that people in this country need. I have long been railing against the idea that we have to adopt policies that result in energy poverty. In other words, impoverishing our fellow American citizens because of failed energy policy. So Wyoming is ready, willing, and able to produce whatever we need to make sure that people can keep the lights on. We can domesticate more in terms of manufacturing. We can produce more right here. Across the board, it makes us a safer, more prosperous country if we do that.
I believe you're right on that. Let me shift gears a little bit here for you because, look, a lot of people in Washington and the Eastern Seaboard think that they know what is best for Wyoming and Montana and Idaho and all the Western states because they've seen pictures. But they don't understand how it really works in Wyoming, now do they? They've seen pictures, and they visited Yellowstone National Park a couple of times, so they know how everything works. But the fact of the matter is, the reintroduction of the wolf has had impact on the Western United States and on the ranchers. And you have just put together some legislation on the reintroduction of the Grizzly Bear State Management Act, meaning the state of Wyoming would have management authority over this apex predator. Doesn't sit well with a lot of people, but for people in the Western United States, you get it. Please explain.
Well, the grizzly bear was listed as threatened in 1975, and the recovery goal was approximately 500 bears. We have over 1,100 grizzly bears in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem alone. We have more than double the number of bears that even the Fish and Wildlife Service says is appropriate or necessary, and they recognize that they have completely saturated Yellowstone National Park, and now they're moving into other areas that were never really part of the critical habitat for the greater Yellowstone grizzly bear. So I have filed a bill to delist the grizzly bear because the Fish and Wildlife Service, whenever they do delist a grizzly bear, which they have a couple of times, the radical environmental groups come in and find a judge that is sympathetic to their cause, and they relist the grizzly bear. Wyoming, in fact, does manage the grizzly bear already. That's who is responsible for it. The Fish and Wildlife Service oversees it. The question has to do with how we manage that bear and whether we're able to do things such as protect our livestock producers and protect our other wildlife species. Both the gray wolf and the grizzly bear are apex predators, meaning that they're at the top of the food chain. And as a result, they can have an enormous impact on our other wildlife resources, whether it's moose or elk, on our livestock industry. So it is important to properly manage these. But another thing for people to keep in mind, when we keep species like the grizzly or the gray wolf on the Endangered Species Act or list, what we're doing doing is we're deflecting and we are diverting resources that could actually be used to recover and protect those species that need help. I mean, you could talk about the California condor, you can talk about the whooping crane. There are species that are endangered and threatened, and we need to be spending the resources to address that. I would perhaps do it a little differently sometimes than the Fish and Wildlife Service does or the courts do. But the fact is, we are deflecting resources to a recovered species when we should be focusing on those species that actually need assistance.
Now, I think you missed the most famous endangered species in Wyoming, the black-footed ferret. Another success story. I mean, the grizzly bear's been a success story. The ferret's been a success story. The point is that the wildlife biologists and scientists, they've done their job. The grizzly bear population double their target. I mean, they've succeeded. It's time to unhandcuff the states to do what they need to do. I've only got about 30 seconds for this, but you also would like to do some reforms on the Endangered Species Act, codifying the Gulf of America. You've been a big part of that. Just real quickly, tell us what that's about.
We had hearings yesterday. I am the chairman of the subcommittee on water, wildlife, and fisheries. And yesterday we had a hearing on several bills that would do just exactly what you're saying. Much needed Endangered Species Act reform, as well as renaming the Gulf to the Gulf of America, which there are a variety of reasons for doing that. But I would encourage people to they could go watch the video. It was in the Natural Resource Committee, the subcommittee on water, wildlife, and fisheries.
Congresswoman, you're one of my favorites. There's no question about it. I always enjoy talking to you. You come from a wonderful state, and I think it's beautiful that you look out for Wyoming every day. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. I do just like her a lot. She's full of that thing that we call common sense. We'll have more after the break here on America's Voice Live.